Good morning, good morning, good morning, and good afternoon if you're in another part of the world, like some of our panelists here. It is Maker Music Festival today, and we're celebrating. We're here with Maker Music Festival with Sherry Huss and Joe Sussex. I don't think I've ever tried to say her.
Such.
Such.
Yes, Such.
Okay, Such. Sorry, I totally butchered that. They are the brains behind Maker Music Festival. And I'm gonna let you guys just give a little good morning before we get started.
Sure. Well, I can start. Thank you for having us. I'm glad everyone's here. There's lots to celebrate, and this is our third year with an online Maker Music Festival, but the idea started 6 years ago when we did a live Maker Music Festival, which one day we hope that we can start doing live Maker Music Festivals all over the world, but COVID actually made that a little bit more challenging. So with that, Joe decided he wanted to do a online Maker Music Festival, and I'll let Joe take it over and maybe say a few words. I also noticed we have Professor Doug Orzlak here with us, who's part of, hey Doug, who's part of University of St. Thomas and the Playful Learning Lab, which we had new things this year that we're realizing we now want to actually focus on. How do we help music educators? We've created this great platform. We have over 466 projects in 35 buildings. And how do we get this out into the school? So we'll talk a little bit about that later with some field trips, but I'll turn it over to Joe, and thank you.
Yeah, so I'm a musician, software guy, things like that, maker, especially a maker these days. And even when we were at the original maker fairs, I always thought there'd be a nice little subcomponent to have a music part of it. And so then finally with the pandemic, when we got locked down, I decided to create a virtual one based on some work we were doing with some other projects. And just make kind of a online community of people involved in creating interesting and unusual musical instruments. And so then, so that kind of worked out. It's third year, we've got something like 450 exhibits from around the world as part of our thing. And then we've actually, and then it's kind of creeping out into the real world. This past September, the producers of Maker Faire in France actually created a Maker Music Festival up in Rennes, in northwestern France, and so that was cool. And then this year, I was invited by the Center for New Music in San Francisco to curate. They have a gallery there, a little gallery, and so I'm curating that for the months of May and June. And so we have a selection of our makers in there, their projects. And then June 1st, we're actually going to have a live performance in San Francisco, where I'll be chitty-chatting about Maker Faire, and as well as we'll have live performances there as well. So that's kind of cool. And so so it's getting out there into the world, which is kind of nice. And then I'm the president of local makerspace here in our area. And so, I teach classes and things like that. And in fact, we have a summer camp every year, and I do a technology and music day with that one. I created these little synthesizer boxes that the kids put together and play with and make a lot of screaming noises, which I found out that some children aren't so much into, but they got to go to the quiet room for a while. And so anyway, so heavily involved in all of this stuff. And so, and so now with the, and I bring the classes up and things with kids and stuff like that. So now I'm kind of committed to taking the Maker Music Festival as a platform, in more of an educational direction as well. And so I think in the coming year, and so you'll probably see more education-based projects being posted. So in fact, my little synthesizer project, I'm going to be making a video and use that as okay.
I guess your time's up, Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, we're glad everyone's here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And just because you were talking about education, Doug, if you will give us a quick hello, and I'll just tell everyone that you're going to be leading. You have some field trips, and maybe how everyone can get on those field trips.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Red, I work with the Playful Learning Lab here at the University of St. Thomas, and we too are, and I should mention my background is I am a professor of music education and work with music educators from across the country. I'm an editor of the Music Educators Journal as well. So my interests lie in the same places that Sherry and Joe and I suspect everybody else does as well, is getting these things into the hands of music educators and giving them the opportunity to explore and work with their students. So yeah, Joe and Sherry and a couple of students here at the Playful Learning Lab and Anne-Marie Thomas and I have been working on some field trips and some other things. And I assume maybe Joe probably show those a little bit later, but just try to develop a bit of a template so that we can share the great work that's been happening here, including we've got a field trip prepared for Makey Makey too.
Awesome.
So yeah, thanks
Thanks.
for the opportunity to say hi.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. All right, so we have gathered some amazing music educators. It is really cool that we shifted the focus to education and we have a whole talk with music educators today from all over the world. So we have Enrico Bertelli here and Yui Shikakura. Marvin is your last name, Jean? N. And Victoria Davis. So I'll just give I would like a really quick intro from you on where you're from and your relation to music education and the age group you interact with most. And I'm going to do Marvin first, and I'm going to try that again. N. Okay, cool.
Hello and good morning or good afternoon or good evening to everyone. So I'm Marvin Jaen, and I'm a music student, actually, a music education student here in Montreal at McGill University, and I'm very honored to be invited here. So I interact mostly with elementary and high school students. So yeah, and I'm originally from the Philippines, so I came here to Montreal just last year to study music education. So that's my background right now.
That's great. Thank you. And Victoria, tell us where you are located and your relation to music education and the age group you interact with most.
Hi, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. As Colleen said, my name is Victoria Davis. I am an opera singer and music educator, specifically a director of education for a company called Opera on Tap, where we bring opera to a playground and reimagine what it looks like in communities. So typically the age group that I work with is elementary school aged. We have a niche of working between ages the second grade to the sixth grade specifically. And yeah, doing a lot of work in the community.
Thank you, Victoria. And then Yui and Enrico can intro together? No, you should intro separately. Yui, you go first.
Okie dokie. Hi, this is Yui from Conductive Music from UK, London. We're based in Southeast, but we work from pretty much everywhere in England, south to north edge. And we deliver music-led STEAM education in primary school to mostly secondary, which is elementary to, I would say, high school, junior high school age in England. And our target is marginalized community, deprived areas, children who has the economical issue or the special educational needs or that sort of things. And I'm going to hand it to Mr. Enrico Bertelli, no, Dr. Enrico Bertelli.
Okie dokie. So yes, hello. Oh, sorry, my camera is frozen. Oh, am I on?
No, you're good.
It's on. It's on. Sorry. Yes, same company. I created Conductive Music 10 years ago. We're really happy. As you say, we're so lucky to go around the country and share this project with the kids. So I come to you today with two hats. The one from Conductive Music, but also I'm a professor at the School of Interdisciplinary Studies at Lingnan Uni in Hong Kong. So that's where we take the same technology, the same approach to the undergrads and see what they can come up with. So that's us.
Very cool. So you can see we have a wide range of folks teaching different types of music education, and I think this will be really fun. So the first thing that we're gonna deep dive into is thinking about how technology and digital tools have dramatically changed in the last 15 years. In fact, in the last 10 years, they've probably changed even more so. So the question is, how has this changed the way you teach music, or how has this changed music education? And I'm just gonna, should I pick on you? Do you want to do it that way?
I can
Victoria,
go
you go.
So this is particularly interesting for the operatic community, because opera is a theatrical genre. It is based in live music. It is based in seeing something happen on stage. It is a very immersive experience. Theater has been happening for at least the millennia that we know of as humans, in the way that we see it now. And so what I would say is the pandemic really shifted the operatic world into becoming more relevant, so to speak. A lot of people saw opera as the grandfather to musical theater. Musical theater encompasses pretty typically a lot of technological aspects outside of the lighting and cameras and microphones and things. But opera typically was not seen in that way. In fact, opera in general, as elitist as it may sound, prided itself on being a bit separatist and not using those technologies only when needed, and specifically with broadcasting. What happened during COVID is, one, the financial dilemma of not having butts in seats occurred. And so budgeting and reimagining budgeting in this particular art form was definitely at the forefront of conversation, but also it gave everyone a chance to sit down and really review how this art form has evolved and what exactly it needs to do to continue to evolve in spite of a natural event, because COVID, it's a virus. It's something that unfortunately happened, and it was unexpected, and it affected lives. So with our program in particular, we went from being on the playground and having this live experience without involving so many aspects of technology to actually solely depending on technology. We digitalized our programming, we filmed and pre-recorded things, we used green screen technology, and we started using paper circuiting technology because we wanted to fit into two bills. The first is to make sure that we can continue to evolve during COVID as needed, and to continue to give children who already have a lack of music education due to school funding and making sure that they have what they need. And the other was also making sure that students knew and understood that operatic performance encompasses more than just being an instrumentalist or more than just being a singer. And I say just in a very generalized way, that means no harm to others. But we had to figure out how to get students super involved in the process. And what we discovered was paper circuiting was a really, really viable option. It showed students how to use green screen technology. It gave them creative license. And it also showed them how the things that they may have thought about in their math and science and engineering or other technology classes could actually apply to an art form and apply in a real way. Yes, paper circuiting. So the company that we initiated this cause with is Chibitronics, and they highlight paper circuiting as a part of what they do. And so what we did was, in one of the scenes for our operas, we created paper circuiting crowns, expressive electronic crowns for the students as their costume. And in the other production, we use green screen technology to create a set that they will pantomime in front of, dance in front of, sing their duets in the German language in front of, et cetera, and so forth. Through this, what we found with our educators in the schools that we've worked with, they have found that involving arts education is not as difficult as it has made to be in the past. Another thing that I don't think is talked about is how core curriculum teachers have been forced in some ways to teach music education, and a lot of them do not feel adequate enough to teach the materials. But because of the influence of technology in the arts now, and because of the work that so many other companies are doing to provide students with the chance to complete STEAM programs, it's really opened up a streamlined way of incorporating everything that students are learning in their core curriculum classrooms.
Cool. I would like to hear what Enrico and Yui have to say about how music education has changed in what they now consider important to know in the music education world, what you do at Conductive Music.
Maestro, Enrico-san, or shall I go first?
You can go together,
Yeah,
or
sorry.
you
I'm
go
just,
first.
you go. I had some issues with the headphones. Go.
Okie dokie. So yes, I think, well, when it comes to technology and music in general, of course, in the music education, because now the classroom has the whole, what's it called, the smart board and the computer things. So it's definitely much more easy to show the video, and so the watching the things and they get the reference, and the music education itself could be more accessible, but the actual things is still very, very conservative, separated. And so what we are doing is still beyond the imagination for the most of the teachers and the kids. I'm pretty sure there's some sort of a rich area private school, and those are doing these activities quite more often. But I think we are still in the past, how to say, during the revolution time, to make the music education more, how to say, technological. So far, I don't see any technology and music activity in, well, only garage band, I think, in the normal primary schools, I think. Yes. Pass it on to Enrico-san.
Yeah, Enrico,
So-
you can tell us what you what you like to focus on.
Okie dokie. Yes. I think, in we can talk for our experience in England, but unfortunately, with music education, especially technology in education, we tread on very, very unstable waters, because we are half with a foot in music education, which is the one that is the last of the last of the last of the last, and the other one is on technology, which is generally considered an optional. So we find very often teachers that they say they don't know anything about technology and they're very proud of it. But if I was a head teacher and I heard them speak about this for maths, they would probably see the door within 5 seconds. However, nobody cares about music, that's the problem. And nobody cares about technology, that's the other problem. Apart from us, of course, that's why we're here. So the main thing is to bridge the gap before even we think about the students, is to bridge the gap between what we're trying to do and how the non-specialist teachers can jump into this boat. That's the first thing that we need to do. That's why we try to prepare a lot of lesson plans. We support them with videos, with slides. So basically, whether they can access live streams or not, or they want to still print stuff, we try to give them everything, absolutely everything. Conversely, on the other side, because of course it's not exactly the teacher's fault either, the problem is that generally speaking, in state schools in England, teachers are completely overwhelmed by everything that is already happening. All of the new metrics, the curriculum changes every 2 years. Nobody, well, okay, maybe not nobody, but there's going to be maybe a 3% of music teachers that are actually musically qualified. Everybody else is either in private school or in posh schools, which is absolutely fine, but for the majority of the population doesn't really do much. So we need to find a way to fast track their introduction to music and to technology without asking them for too much effort, basically. So this is where we're at. This is what we're trying to do. And I think, sorry, just checking if there's any questions here? No. Okay, fine, perfect. What we're trying to do is just streamline the introduction to this world for everybody.
Nice. Thank you. And Marvin, you and I were talking about 21st century skills and how we could actually kind of incorporate 21st century skills into music education. Did you want to talk a little bit about that? You had some great ideas.
Yeah, well, I'll speak to my experience as a piano teacher and a music educator that's studying here. So, technology, I think, has made music more accessible, studying music more accessible. Like you have a lot of tutorials on YouTube on how to do a particular song, or apps that will teach you how to study the piano or the guitar. But I think these has like both positive and negative connotations. Like the positive thing I can think about this is that learning music couldn't be more easier than before. It's very easy to get into learning a song that you like, perhaps because of the wealth of resources that we have. But a result of that I've seen is that we are losing some of the skills that students need to develop, like um, rhythmic skills or analytical skills or problem solving skills, because they have become perhaps so dependent on these technologies and resources available to them now that uh, they would rather take the shortcut than learn how to count the rhythm. So I think we're losing on those basic skills, but at the same time, they're learning 21st century skills. Like I've seen students work with Logic. They don't even have any musical background, and they can access all of these different sheet music or platforms where they can learn something that they really want to learn. So they have these skills to pick up and learn what they want to learn. But unfortunately, if we go back to the basics and perhaps ask them to tap this particular rhythm, then I've seen a lot of students not find the answers to those questions just because they would rather resort to listen to it on YouTube. Like just yesterday, I had a student I was accompanying. We were doing something, forgot the title, and then she couldn't get the entrances to one of her solo pieces. So she then said, "Well, I'll listen to it more. I'll listen to the piano part more." I was surprised. Instead of saying, "I'll count my rests so that I can come to that entrance really clearly," she said, "I'll listen to it more." Which I said, "It's going to be a problem because the recording might be different from the tempo that we're doing and things like that." So I think that's the change that I've seen in music education over the past few years. And yeah, I think I'm gonna expand more on the skills, I think, as we go along in the line of questions that we have.
That's actually really a great segue into our next question, Marvin. So thank you. But also I see that with my own kid all the time. Like she wanted to do this talent show song and she's supposed to be singing it. And I'm like, okay, you've got to practice. And now we need to sing from your diaphragm. And like, we have to do these things. And she was like, no, I don't want to. I'm going to do it this way. I'm just going to listen and I'm going to sing it. And I'm going to just, wing it. And I'm like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. You have to there are skills involved. So it's what's interesting is that the maker movement came about kind of at the same time that employees, you guys are all kind of bridging into the same conversation. Employers were noticing that there were a skills gap in the workforce. Like lots of kids have problems collaborating with peers. They had trouble thinking critically about topics. I think all of this is still pretty true. We've been working the last 10 years really hard on getting kids to collaborate and work in teams better. And delving into problem solving. That's one thing that we at Makey Makey, like why we think, our invention kit is important is we think that it helps kids learn problem solving and helps them to think critically. So do you see any patterns around a possible gap in terms of kids' knowledge of music fundamentals, which is pretty much what Marvin was just saying? Like, is there a musical skills gap? If any of the other participants want to add on to that.
Singing, definitely. They don't sing in England. We have so many kids cannot sing at all. So I think they need maybe because they pushed too much sheet music, so they lost the imitating singing style or something. They just should enjoy the singing from the early, especially the early years. The singing is very important in early years education, but somehow there are big gap. And some schools, yes, like a Church of England school or Roman Catholic school, when they have a choir, they have singing. But otherwise, when we do the singing activity during the session, they really can't sing at all. And that is surprising and quite sad. And singing, you need to develop from small age, when they were
Yeah.
small, I think. They get used to it. But
Well, and singing
unfortunately,
will give you the musical stuff. So, like, what are they learning if they're not learning to sing? They're just learning
they
the
don't have the
rhythm
music.
and
Maybe they don't have the music activity, or just seeing the video and they see it's a part of the music education or something.
oh, and they don't
Yeah,
have a teacher, so they're just like watching a video, and they may
yeah,
not be.
and maybe they're just doing the recorder and they're playing the two notes and that they did the music and that sort of things. That is quite common, but of course, because it's very much we are working in marginalized area and the deprived area. So when that happens, art, music is everything behind.
Yeah.
So, but yes, that's the thing. We should sing more. That's it.
Okay. The other thing I was wondering is what do you need to teach kids about music that is difficult to teach them?
I think I can add on to that and
Oh,
actually relate.
Marvin, for some reason your mic is really low. I don't know if you can make your volume louder.
Of course, is this much better?
Much better. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, to answer that question and to add on and relate it to the previous question, one skills gap and one difficult music concept that I've seen kids fail at is improvisation. I've got a lot of long-time piano students that they're good. They can play their music. And I asked them, can you improvise just anything on the key of C? Here are the chords, C, F, G. They can't do it. They're good imitators. They can play music that they listen to on YouTube. They can play something with the sheet music. But ask them to improvise, they just don't know what to do, and they're afraid to go out and expose themselves, expose their ideas, just because I think they've gotten so used to having things served to them that this is what you should do. You should do these three notes on the recorder or these three notes on your clarinet, and this is what we should play. That now they can't improvise, and I think that's taking out the fun in music. Like, music is now, you have to perform this instead of it being an avenue for your self-expression and identity. So that's one skills gap, and I think that's one topic that is very difficult, some might say even boring. They avoid it all the time, but I think it's very important to develop improvisation skills.
I totally agree. My own daughter's been practicing piano since second grade, and she didn't start learning improv till this newest teacher. And that kind of surprises me even that that's not taught along with the beginning. Oh, actually, I take that back. Her very first teacher did do improv all the time, and they did different instruments all the time, but we moved. So, but it's still like, it seems like improv is something you need to learn that when you start learning all of it, needs to be taught in tandem.
But unfortunately, the music education, classic one itself, has the issue with that things. Maybe Enrico wants to talk about those more, the improvisation. Yeah?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I can.
Yeah, because
Sorry,
when we teach music school students, they get frozen because when we ask to improvise something and when we teach how to improvise, but they are so they so get used to playing the music on the seat, from the seat, so they can't, especially the music education music students who is learning the classic things for a long time. And sometimes the kids who don't know anything, who doesn't know anything, do more fun things and adventurous. So it's also quite interesting.
If I can add just a quick point on the improvisation stuff, there was a method and a book that changed completely the way I was teaching. I discovered it about 10 years ago. There's a guy called Paul Harris that published this thing called simultaneous learning. And the idea was that this is to start with the early years for improvisation and stuff. It's you've got your books, yes, fair enough, but you don't open the book, you don't put it on the piano or whatever instrument you're teaching until the very, very end of the lesson. In brief, the method is asking you first to play the piece, then to ask the kids to hum the tune, and then maybe to clap it, maybe to do some body percussion, and then depending on what type of teacher you are, you can take it your own direction. And then what happens is instead of learning the piece as it is, you start discussing how is it made. I mean, for example, think of a very simple piece where you just play two black keys, the D sharp and E flat, and back and forth and put a rhythm, and then you move an octave above and then you move an octave below. So you don't really need to stick to what's written on the page. That's not the point. It is, I'm just starting with two fingers on two notes. I can easily spot them, obviously different instrument, different structure, and I can start making my own tune. And by the end of the lesson, at least according to this method, that's where you open the page and you say, okay, you know what we've been doing for the last half an hour? This is how it looks. And the way I experimented on my students, it was incredible, especially because at the same time, as a teacher, obviously, if you teach the same piece over and over again, I'm surprised you don't want to kill yourself by the end of the day, because I was just like, I couldn't take it anymore. The reason why I opened conductive music was specifically because I couldn't say one more time with your other left hand. That was the beginning of my new career. But it's so cool to see when the kids actually jump in, and exactly when what Marvin was saying, when the creativity part, that's the key part of the music, even beyond the technological issues, if you wish. But the really nice thing about weird instruments like Makey Makey and the family is that because there is no expectation, because there is no examination, and because nobody else knows what it should do, we kind of go back to that childish curiosity, childish in a positive way, like instinctive curiosity, and that actually breaks down the barriers, because I have to say, if we want to point the fingers, we shouldn't point the finger on the children, but it's definitely on the teachers, because it's most of the music teachers that I was working with at the time did not improvise at all. So that, and also they were not playing alongside the kids. That's one of the key things. So if you're teaching piano, you cannot just sit there and just listen to the others play. You need to play together. And of course, if you've got a fixed piece, that's almost impossible to do. But if you've got like a groove that you can meddle about, and then have the other people, the pupils, play on top and then create music together, that really opens up a massive increasing speed for the learning. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
Oh, I love that. And actually, Loriano in chat said that Billy Martin, drummer of Medeski, Martin and Wood, said in one of his videos that before they start practice, the first thing that he does is you have to improvise with the instrument. No matter if you can create a simple fill or whatever you're doing, you have to connect with your instrument and develop trust with the instrument. It's kind of interesting to think about your instrument as like something you need to trust. I can relate to that with like riding my bike. Like I have to trust that my bike is going to get me down the hill and, over those big rocks, and because that's what it's made to do. And so the instrument is too. So I really like that concept. I also really like this kind of conversation where you're leading into where we're talking about like ways that you teach musical concepts, that they find difficult. Like, what are ways you teach musical instrument? I keep saying instruments. What are the ways you teach difficult musical concepts in a fun way, that something that keeps that makes it more intriguing, like what you just said, Enrico, that whole idea. Just more concrete examples for our listeners.
If I can, I would actually say something that we are continuing to discover and work on is how harmonization can be taught through digital technology. And not only that, the unique challenge that we have is that harmony in general with music education is not being taught to children. We have a very unique task in front of us, because most of the schools that we work with have either no music teacher, or their music teacher is limited in the materials that they can teach. So we have implemented, much like Enrico was saying, either pulsing out the beat on the body in some form, speaking through the language and rhythm, teaching them individually, and also letting them sit with the pitches individually, breaking it down so they can hear how they meld with each other easily or not. If they're crunchy, we use textured words to describe how we can teach the harmony. So students, when they understand that it's supposed to be a crunchy harmony, or when it's more smooth, when they're singing these harmonies, they can pick it up with their own intuitive consciousness, because they aren't taught these elements in schools. So that's something that I would say that we typically use in the classroom that we find works quite a bit. The other part of it is we use a lot of neurodivergent tools. One of the things that we highlight specifically, and we're continuing to work through with our neurodivergent tools, is highlighting the music and studying the music, even if you can't read it in a way that makes sense to an individual's brain. That can look like using color coding, that can look like looking at the notes and looking at them differently. Sometimes it looks like turning the notes into stars or to hearts, or something that will work to create either a pattern in their brain or whatever have you, to make the educational experience a little easier for those students who just have a lack of music education elements in their schools.
Thank you. That's really good. Marvin, do you want to add any ideas? You could tell us about your idea for rhythm. I thought was really cool.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, so that idea and rhythm that I have here was basically letting the students learn about the steady beat. So what I did, I programmed something in Scratch. This was like the minuet in G. So I programmed it so that each touch on whatever object I have would trigger just one beat of the song. And then if they touched it quickly, then of course they can't hear the song properly. If they touch it too slowly, they can't hear the song properly. If they are not tapping on the object steadily, they're also not going to hear the music. So they have to make sure that they're tapping on the object steadily in order to hear the music. And I thought this was a really cool way to learn the steady beat, because I've seen a lot of students have trouble just clapping a steady beat by themselves. And I thought, well, let's see if I program a music that you know, cut it up into different beats, and I let you tap the beat so that it's gonna play the beats while you tap. Then I think you can learn the steady beat there. So those are just one of the lesson ideas that I have for Makey Makey, which I think um, transforms learning musical concepts such as that, into a fun and creative venture for the children, because it's really boring for them to just go through the music lesson. So I actually did this in the elementary school, and they were also excited for music class. So that's one potential that I'm seeing here with these kinds of technologies now, and just one example of a lesson that I thought about.
Yeah, thank you. And that actually goes well with the next question, which is looking at kids and learning styles and how many different learning styles we have, because just everything y'all are talking about, I can hear the different learning styles that you're either having trouble with or the ones that, you appeal to a certain kid, a different type of kid than others. So are there, how do you as a music educator appeal to these different learning styles with kids? Like, you've got kinesthetic learners, so that I think what Marvin was just saying is a really great way to teach rhythm for a kinesthetic learner. And then you have the visual learners. Like, what are the different things that you do?
I would actually go back to what I said before, full transparency. And we talk about this a lot with schools to let them know. Most of my team that I work with, we are all neurodivergent in some form or fashion, whether that is ADD, ADHD, neurodivergent, by dyslexic. One of our teaching artists is on the autistic spectrum. So what we've tried to do is, because we know that we are literally on a time limit, we only have about an hour, typically about actually 45 to 50 minutes, if we're honest, to teach our materials. And what we found through research that we've done in working with the Renee Fleming Foundation and seeing how music affects the brain and things of that sort is that neurodivergent methods actually help most, if not all, students. I'm going to say most here because I firmly believe that nothing is 100%. But what I have found is that using the methods that most neurodivergent students use in order to learn materials, specifically music, and specifically students who just don't have a music education background, it is something that works very well. Using dyslexic font, it's very easy for all of our students to read. What we do with our schools, we give them fidget toys. So Marvin, much like what you were speaking of with rhythms and things, some of our students use the fidget toy to actually punch through the rhythms. It helps them to concentrate on what music we're working on, but also it helps them to feel something at the same. It's almost like a it's very therapeutic. That's the best way that I can describe it. I'm not going to try to use a fancy scientific word, but it's almost therapeutic for them because they're able to fully immerse themselves into the experience, but also acknowledge that they are picking up on other cues, because neurodivergent brains are a little different. We're a little different. And it just helps with music making and music learning. Another method that we use is our teaching artists have a video recorded where it's a close-up of the mouth. A lot of students really prefer to look at the mouth to imitate, and we found that method works best. And these are all things that we've either learned from personal experience as students or things that we have just seen happen over time that we've picked up on in our classrooms. So those are just a few different methods. But I do think that they've been highly effective. I think that the schools that we have used all of those types of methods, again, these are only a few, are the ones that we have the most success with, especially when we're using the entire body with music making. I think that's an element that's been lost in music education, using the body in different ways, even with our nonverbal students or our students who may have physical disabilities. We make sure to enable practices that will be helpful for them long term and that they can apply to other types of music when they begin the learning process in those areas.
Enrico actually gave me a tip that I think might be a post-COVID tip, actually. I was going to classrooms teaching Makey Makey with 3rd grade and 4th grade, and I was having a lot of trouble, just more trouble than I was used to with the students and sort of their behavior. And he said, just make sure you always show them on the screen. Like, always have a screen with you showing it. Like, don't stand at the front of the classroom and hold the Makey Makey up, because they're not going to look at it. But if you put that on a document camera and then they can see it on the TV, and like suddenly they all paid much more attention looking at it on the screen instead of in real life, which I guess is a sad realization, but it really helped. So
Glad to hear it worked.
yeah, it really worked. It works.
Sometimes we found also when you speak on top of an annoying beat, they also lock into what you're saying better as well. So, for example, at the end of our workshops, we always try to do a little performance. It's very simple. We have two-hour workshops in which we get all of the concepts. We build the instrument, we learn how to play, we make a composition. So we just have like a 4-bar thing at the end to do. And then if you give them instructions just by voice, they're not really locked in. But if you start the drum loop and you let it quite noisy in the background, and then you talk on top of it, they are actually understanding better.
Wow.
It's
Because
just
they can't talk with the drum beat, I'm guessing.
That's one important thing. Yes, you're definitely facing the front. You're not messing about. But those things definitely work. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's much more common in a post-COVID environment. Yes.
Yeah. I agree. Cynthia is saying she loves to hearing that Victoria said all the things we do for neurodivergent learners helps everyone. And I mean, that's kind of always been the case, that when we actually focus on a special need, we help everyone. But those of us that are neurodivergent, thank you for thinking about the way
UI UX, I think, no?
The way we think.
Yeah.
All right. So because we're getting close on time, and I really wanted to talk about, and Victoria dipped a little into this with Chibitronics, but I wanted to talk a little more about maker technologies and how you're using them in the classroom, and maybe just some more specifics that you're doing. And I was really thinking, because I have this question about what I'm thinking about virtual musical instruments versus physical musical instruments. So I guess Yui and Enrico, if you want to talk a little bit about your virtual music instruments that you do with kids, and then I'll rephrase my question to make more sense. I don't know. They're like, what?
Okay.
No,
Yes.
okay, fine. I'll do it. So if there is a battle between virtual and physical wins all the time. For what Victoria was saying about the fidget spinners and stuff, physical instruments, I think they work exactly the same way. The touch is above. That's it. That's and I'm a tech person, but the touch is beyond, and that's why we always like to start from the the computer side of things, but always have a physical device out. And even though there's more problems, because where there's hardware, it's a minefield. Software is much easier to deal with, but it's a different result. We also see it in terms of feedback. The excitement of the in-class hands-on workshops are much better voted than the ones that you do remotely or the ones that you do without a physical thing. This being said, excuse me, we try to have the build your own instrument, and the most interesting one is what we teach at the beginning of secondary school. So the kids are about 12 and 13, and they are at the end of our journey. So in a sentence, the first instrument that we use with the year 1s and 2s, so when they're really little, is a Touch Me, which when you squeeze, it's a MIDI synth. When you squeeze, it goes high in pitch. If you touch a little bit, it just goes up and down, basically. So the spirit is, with the young ones, we just want to have a direct action reaction feedback. Okay, so it's you making that thing move on the screen, and that's already the big eureka moment. We move on to the Makey Makey after, because it gives you more chances to customize, to take decisions, to make it your own, right? And then we start attaching lots of things. We move on to the microbits. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. It's more of a British thing. The BBC created this little thingy here some 5-6 years ago now. Yes, 2016. Gave it to all of the secondary schools. Nobody bothered. They ended up at the bottom of the cupboard because nobody told the teachers, basically. But then they built a second version of this microbit that actually has a speaker behind. Yes, you could attach some speakers, but the idea is now that you've got it built in, this is a marvelous musical instrument. Now, why am I saying all this? Because at the end of this journey, when we go into year 7s and 8, so 11, 12, 13, we don't use devices anymore. It's the end of the journey. So we go from a device that you touch and does everything for you to no device. It's a black screen, nothing is in it unless you make it. And the idea is the musical video games. So we use a platform that I'm sure you're very familiar with. It's called Microsoft Arcade. And we basically design a video game in brief, simple, but from scratch that makes music every time you move something. So moving up and down gives you a note. There is a generative bass loop. There is a randomized drum loop. And then at the end of the day is a tiny little game that you can build just half an hour and then makes music as you create your actions. So this is the most virtual one that we use. And by the way, for those of you that are not familiar, there's also a Makey Makey extension. So you can create your game and then hook up the Makey Makey and play with it, which is, that's the extra step.
Yes. On the related note, just by adding, because when we didn't have anything we can do apart from the tablet or something about tablet, now Makey Makey works, but sometimes we can only do software based workshop, but we always do some body percussion and connect to the understanding of how drum beat works and what is on the drum loops and that sort of thing. So we always combine, even if we work with only the software base, technology base, we always do music activity with your body, the kids' body, and move on to music, because otherwise you don't understand what's going on only on the technology. So
what I'm hearing is that physical is always better than digital, but with maker technologies, we also have an accessibility issue because schools don't have teachers, schools don't have guitars, they don't have instruments. So, but maybe we can be bridging the gap, like Enrico's saying. He used the Playtronica board, and then Makey Makey and microbit. So it's something that we at Makey Makey have been looking at doing, is creating some type of musical instrument templates for students to create music with Makey Makey. And we were thinking, like, what would be fun to make? Like, what are instruments you'd be interested in? And I'm going to ask Marvin first. What musical instruments would you want to make with Makey Makey that you would feel you need some kind of template or,
Musical instruments. Well, there are a lot of possibilities. I mean, you can. I think if I'm gonna like do this, I'm gonna do strings, like a violin, or some of the woodwind instruments. Basically, any instrument, which I think could work well if you like pre-program notes or certain musical passages, and students can maybe choose a phrase or choose a note or choose to combine notes or phrases of that certain instrument. And I think that's breaking the barrier of having to learn an instrument, breaking the barrier of not knowing how to play an instrument. Then now you can say, oh, I can play the violin, I can create a melody with the violin, or with the drums, I can play drums. I can play drums if you pre-program a loop, for example, and you're just using Makey Makey to use that as a switch to activate the loop. It's not saying that you're dumbing down the music, but you're allowing the students to explore and be creative without that barrier of learning an instrument. And I think it's a lot of instruments: a xylophone, percussion instruments, strings, woodwinds, anything really.
I'm just thinking you're like guitar heroing.
Yeah, guitars. Yeah, Guitar Hero would. Yeah, like Rosa Rhythm.
Like you're making
Rhythm
it
games.
so that, you're playing a couple of notes and it sounds really good. Like you're still doing the right finger placements, but you're not doing all of the guitar, and you're making a good song,
Well, one thing that I did at the Makerspace, and I've done this in the local schools, is I create a one-string instrument. It's like you call it a diddly bow.
A canto?
It's exactly. And so, but I laser cut a box and I mean, I can show you a picture. And then, so the kids actually, it's like, oh, here's a stringed instrument. It's only one string, right? and you have to tune it and things like that, and then you can play it. And so, and then I let them make it their own. They design it and they put stuff on it and stick and paint on it and and then they walk away with this little instrument, and then they've learned, and I talk about sound and how the string vibrates, and so they get it's a little kind of a STEM based thing, but yeah. And so, but I have resources like laser cutters and stuff like that, so I sit there and I can kind of make them out, and I laser cut the frets, so I can talk about where they're touching the string to make sound, to make the notes. So I found that to be, and then they're all actually, the kids just go crazy. They just love it, and then they're happy. They walk away with this thing, and they've learned about the fundamentals of a stringed instrument, right? Without making a violin, that.
I love that. I made in our Makey Makey book, we made a kalimba out of grass,
Right. Yeah.
but it's programmed in Scratch, and so no matter really how you play it, it's going to play chopsticks, but it looks like you're playing chopsticks, like you feel really successful because you're playing chopsticks, but anyway. Did anyone else want to answer the question about musical instruments before we?
Good. So one of the questions that my teaching artists started asking in the classroom was what they see as music technology. And it actually goes hand in hand with what you are asking about instruments. So the first piece of technology that we found students just automatically see as such for music is a piano. Mm-hmm. So I would actually say, if I could make an instrument with Makey Makey, I would make a piano. I think it encompasses everything that a music educator would need, at least in the Music Education 101 stage, mostly because I think looking at the notes on a piano is viable. It's something that they can touch, they can feel, they can look at the shape of middle C and know that that is middle C and where it is. So I would say that that's the way to go with music technology for me and my students.
Making your own piano.
It's really interesting that they did that, but it was also interesting, and it actually has to do with budgets in schools. Most students hadn't seen a grand or a baby grand piano until they were either in upper elementary or secondary school levels. So most of people's idea of what a piano looks like is actually a keyboard, which you plug into a wall. So that was a really interesting idea that I saw in students, and I think it's a cool leadway into showing how technology is used in everyday life. A drum kit or a synthesizer, like all of those different things, I think it's very interesting how children see music technology.
I think a metallophone, which I didn't know was a thing. I thought there was only xylophones, and then I said, "What's that metal looking xylophone?" And my daughter said, "That's a metallophone." I was like, "Did you make that word up?" She's like, "No, it's real." I was like, "Oh, a metallophone would be like the xylophone's also very visual, and it's almost, it's a piano like broken out into even more of a kinesthetic way to look at. Okay, well, I want to give Sherry at least 5 minutes, so we'll be a little bit over, but I'm going to hand it over to Sherry. But before I do that, I want to thank all of you. This has been amazing. I wish we'd booked 2 hours, even for a Saturday. And, it's just, I feel like we only just got started in our time's up. But it's been really great talking to all of you. Thank you for coming, and please stay for just a couple more minutes. Sherry's going to show us how to get to the field trips. And Sherry, your audio is not on, just in case you're talking.
Okay. Anyway, thank you all. A really great discussion. I agree with Colleen, and also want to really thank Makey Makey. You've been there, as of several of the makers that are on the call, the music makers as well, from the very beginning. So thank you. What I really wanted to show you is a couple new additions this year. When you enter Maker Music Festival, you can actually get to the tours either from the main menu, which is right here if you click Education, and it'll take you to the tours. Or when you get into the program, all the new buildings this year, and I think there's 4 new buildings, Each building is named after a music educator.
A
Sorry, pioneer of music, sorry. And all of the buildings will have the new buildings this year will have a link here where you can hit the virtual field trips as well. Also note that in this map area too, it's a quick way to get to who the buildings, who's in there, and a little bit about the building. And for your students too, if they want to learn a little bit about Moog or whatnot, it'll take you to a site. In addition, if you come in and hit education, you'll be able to get to the field trips, which again, a little bit about Playful Learning Lab, but we have 9 field trips right now. We're just getting started, so more will be added, but we have stringed instruments, percussive instruments, instruments including records and cassette tapes, which is pretty cool. Projects from East Asia, projects from Argentina, which Laureano has a couple projects in there. Instruments made of repurposed materials, Makey Makey, projects from France, and instruments that look like pianos. So Victoria, maybe that's kind of interesting too for you. If we go into the Makey Makey field trips, we will also have printed downloadable copies that that the teachers can have. But basically, you'll see, I think that there's 3 or 4 field trips per session. This will take you through, it'll give you the location, the name, and these links will take you right to to either the project or the building. There's some guiding questions. There's some vocabulary. And as I said, there's 2 or 3 or 4 in here as well. The other thing I want to show you quickly is that there's actually a search function too that you can get to from the main nav bar if you're looking for things. For example, if I type Makey Makey in here, oops, it should take me, there you go, and give me all the Makey Makey projects. So you can do that again as quick reference. So there's lots, if you haven't spent any time, there's lots of great things in here. And again, I encourage you to, again, take it out, spread the word. Doug and team, Doug, I don't know if you want to say anything again. I think we're just really getting started. We realize we have a treasure trove of projects in Maker Music Festival. And now how do we actually get tools for teachers to take them out into the classroom? And Doug, I'll let you say anything you'd like to.
Oh, sure. I think you just said it perfectly. And you know, as a 34-year-old veteran music educator, gosh, I wish these things were available when I had first started teaching. So you know, Joe, Sherry, and our team here at PLL, we're all thinking about how do we get this out? How do we share the great work that so many of you have provided here at Maker Music Festival? And we'd love your ideas. If you've got suggestions or ideas, we would gladly take them. And just want to thank Colleen for the opportunity for all of us to gather and share and think a little bit about the various roles that Makey Makey, but of course the Maker Music Festival could play and helping music educators, as Victoria and others noted. There's so many that are just looking for resources, and the kinds of things you're sharing and talking about are so valuable. We just got to get the word out there.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, so much. And I put the links in for the field trips, makermusicfestival.com/field trips. I am going to put this video up on YouTube, so that's why I'm saying some of the things in chat. And this video will be live. It's not going anywhere. We'll have it up on our blog at makeymakey.com/blog, but you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and find it there. And just thank you, all of you. And the Maker Music Festival will be up all year, and you guys are just changing it each year, right? Kind of adding to it.
We just keep adding. It's a virtual.
Yeah, nothing goes away.
Nothing goes away. That's right.
It's all going to be there, and you can take those field trips. You can take your students on the field trips. I checked out the Makey Makey one. Thank you, Doug. It's so cool. Like, I love the idea of just like, oh, you're making a piano with water. What else can you do? And looking at that really crazy typewriter instrument that Lonershy made. So thanks, everybody. This was a good way to work on the weekend. So
absolutely.
Have a great Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your Maker Music Festival. Go explore the buildings, and we'll see you later.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.